another thing that was is taking philosophy courses that has troubled the philosophers since the late Enlightenment is the whole question of knowledge. How is it that we can know anything at all? How can we, and this was actually another one of the things that haunted me. I remember looking at my sister's windowsill in her bedroom, and we had to change rooms when I was in the leg cast. So I was staring out the window and looking at the pattern on the windowsill, and I thought, well, how do I know that is really, that what I'm seeing actually corresponds to what's really there, and that other people are seeing the same thing that I'm seeing? And then I thought, oh boy, there's again something wrong with me. I'm having this weird thought. I don't know how to answer it. Later learned that this was, the big question that philosophers have been asking since Hume and Kant was, how is it possible for us to justify the idea that we have any knowledge of the world around us, that there is a mind-independent reality that we can know truly? And there was a really powerful argument that I was exposed to as an undergraduate in philosophy called the argument from epistemological necessity, because the key concern of the philosophers was the reliability of the human mind. And Hume and Kant were especially attuned to they were especially aware that there were certain things we were assuming, that our minds necessarily assumed about reality that were necessary to making sense of reality. And then the question that naturally arises is, well, can we trust those assumptions? How do we know that nature is uniform? How do we know that all events have causes? How do we know that the way our minds spatially order, that our perceptual apparatus and the assumptions that are embedded in our minds to make sense of sensory data how do we know that those assumptions that our minds are making match reality? And so this is the whole question of the reliability of the human mind. And it was a philosopher that I encountered in university presented the case that it was theism that could uniquely answer that question. If our minds had been made by a benevolent creator who made our minds to know the world that he made, then we could have confidence in our ability to know the world. And this, I found later, was one of the assumptions of the scientific revolution. It was called the idea of intelligibility, that we can do science because this was the assumption of the early scientists. Our minds are made in the image of an intelligent and rational creator. Therefore, he's endowed us with rationality, and we can understand, therefore, the rational structure that he built into the world, which we depict with our descriptions of the laws of nature, our understanding of the design of nature. And so there was a principle of correspondence between the rationality built into the world and the rationality we had to understand the world and its rational structure. And so it seemed to me that theism, and particularly Judeo-Christian theism, which is this idea of our minds being made in the image of the Creator, provided an answer to what is now called the postmodern turn in philosophy, the worry about our ability to know the world and wondering if we are all kind of trapped in a isolating sense of subjectivity. So these were the weird, strange thoughts I was having more in college. But this really convinced me that this to me was a very compelling argument for theism, that theism alone could ground our ability to know. We all lived as though we knew things, but if we were living as though we knew things, then we were tacitly affirming that our minds were made in such a way as to know the world, and really only theism could justify that assumption.
Yeah, so you started worrying very early on, compared to most kids, about metaphysical issues, and as you got further along, the answers that made you more calm and happy were also the ones that conform to reality. And I think you're carrying that forward in your science. It should be no surprise that the more we look, the more we see God, if all that is true, which means you would lean to being a theist. The interesting thing to me, your first problem you mentioned as a kid, which would be, does Babe Ruth matter anymore? I call it what has Alexander the Great or Napoleon done for me lately?
Yeah, right.
Nothing, right?